Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joe Pisapia, and today we're going to turn things around. Last show, we were talking about the players the projections love. This time, we're talking about projections that maybe aren't too kind to some of the players this year in 2026. We'll be using the ATC projections, but don't forget our Fantasy Pros projections were number one last year. That's right, numero uno. And of course, we want you to go to fantasypros.com for all of our ranks and all of our projections here going forward. And help me go through some of these names here on the list. Scott Bogman, the Welsh, and of course, all of you hanging out here watching on our channel. And by the way, speaking of our channel, don't forget March 11th, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on the channel Wednesday, myself, Welsh, Ryan Wormley, we've got Joe Arica, we've got guests like Scott Pianowski, Lance Brozdowski, Jeff Ponce, Casey Bubba. All these folks are going to join us for what? For the annual Fantasy Baseball Fest. I know people have been messaging me, asking, when does it start? When does it start? It starts Wednesday, so make sure you're here for the 4 hours, 3 p.m. Eastern. It starts. Again, you can pick it up anytime you want, and of course, if you miss anything, don't worry. It's all going to be on our YouTube channel on demand, so check it out at youtube.com/fantasyprosmlb. So subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers. Do that right now. Ring the bell till it goes ding, so you don't forget the Fantasy Fest happens. And don't forget, right after the fest, Scott Bogman and Joe Arica are going to go to Twitch at twitch.tv/fantasypros, do a live fantasy draft, so maybe you can get in that as well. Gentlemen, let's just jump in with both feet here because we got a lot to get to today. I want to start with a hitter this time that is possibly someone that we got to look at in terms of their projections for 2026. Let's start with Christian Yelich. Now, I took him in yesterday's draft because he fell a little too far for my liking. It was an OBP league too, and I like Yelich there. But right now, projections on ATC have him for 135 games. No shocker there. You always want to put some missed time in there for him. 19 homers, just 74 RBI and 74 runs scored. Only 16 steals and a 258 batting average. Welsh, I'll start with you on this one here. Obviously, last year was a solid year for Christian Yelich, but we've all known in the past, it's been a little dicey in terms of playing time and in terms of health. So are these projections kind of alluding to something that we should be accounting into our brains when we're drafting him?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about projections hating a player, this is the guy. And what it looks like, especially if they're taking in the 3 or maybe even 4 year averages, is they're looking at this and they're saying, we don't really believe 24, we don't believe 23, because last year were some monster numbers. This is a pretty big downgrade. They're talking him playing 15 less games, 10 less homers. He hit 29 homers last year with a 264 average. The year before that, by the way, he hit 315. This is just seeing things coming down. Even though he's not striking out more, this is way less homers. ATC's got him at 19 homers and the same amount of stolen bases. But if you look at him overall last year, he barreled the crap out of the ball. He still hit it hard. On average, he hit it hard. He did strike out a little bit more. Probably the wonkiest thing, and this has always been a Christian Yelich thing, is he had an absurdly ridiculous 1.9 degree launch angle. I mean, he is unable to lift the ball. So I think that's where some of this comes from. It's interesting that ATC is an aggregate. Something like the Bat X would probably look at some of the StatCast data and they would pull and they'd be like, man, that's great that he's barreling at a high degree. That's great that he's hitting the ball hard, but he doesn't pull it and he doesn't get the ball in the air whatsoever. And that's kind of a negative. So at the end of the day, the projection really does hate him comparatively. I kind of see where it is, but I got to tell you, I think it's just hard to bet against Christian Yelich. The thing that hurts him is when he doesn't play games, but he's had 2 seasons out of the last 3 where he's had significant games and he's either hit a bunch of homers, stolen a bunch of bases. He hits for average. This team is going to be highly competitive. The projections hate him, but I don't. I don't hate Christian Yelich in this one, but this is a wildly low number.
Let's
you actually do hate him though. Here. You do hate him according to your rankings. Well, you're low on
Somebody
him.
brought receipts.
All right.
I can't believe I'm higher on Christian Yelich than you are this year because I have traditionally not been a Christian Yelich guy. But I think looking at him in particular with projections, it reminds me, I went to First Pitch one year and I talked to Ron Chandler, who does BABS, right? The broad assessment of everyone. And I love the way he pointed out something. He said, all right, so this player, he did the player A, player B and all this stuff. But he said, let's just take any player, right? They hit 24 homers in their first year. They hit 35 in their next year. What's your projection for this year? And everybody said like 30, like in the middle. It's like, okay, based on what? right? Like it's kind of an eye-rolling process because you look at Christian Yelich and he was different than he typically has been in years past, right? The OBP was down. The walk rate was way down. He had been over 10% every year of his career since 2016, and he fell to 9.9 this year. His K rate was the highest it ever has been as well. So he's a different player, but the bottom line was great numbers. 264 average, 88, 29, 100 RBIs, and 16 swipes. So I think at the end of the day, as long as he stays healthy, you have a pretty good player here. I think where he hits in the lineup, he's obviously aging and he's going to lose a little bit, but I think maybe the projections went a little far on the negativity here for Yelich.
Yeah, and the age is going to be turning 35 this year. So obviously, that's we're starting to get up there a little bit for a guy who's got a history of back issues. But last year was terrific. I'm somewhere in the middle between last year and the projections, actually. So to answer that weird question in a weird way, that's where I am on Yelich. And the biggest thing I could say is discount. If he falls too far, I like him. If he's going at his current ADP, which typically right now, looking at it on FantasyPros, the consensus, he is the 94th player overall, the 27th outfielder. I think that's okay. Some other guys, like I think I'd rather take an upside swing at a guy like Luis Robert, maybe a round later. But if he falls to that same grouping or even lower than guys like Taylor Ward or even like a Brandon Nimmo, I think Yelich is more intriguing than those guys.
And one other thing to point out, technically in an NFBC-based format, he only played 19 games in the outfield, so he wouldn't qualify. So that would say, so if he's a util only, we're talking about another thing. And I just want to say, like, I agree overall. My rank isn't high. I'm not the biggest buyer of him, but I think I'm in the middle. And I'm probably in that stupid thing that you were just talking about where it's like, well, listen, like, I don't think he's going to hit more homers, but I don't think he's a sub 20 home run guy. If he's healthy, I think he's somewhere in the 20 to 25 range. I think he steals 15 to 20. Hopefully the back is better this year. But if he doesn't have outfield eligibility, that also hurts him. But this is probably the most dramatic low decrease year over year from what they did last year compared to what the projections are this year for a pretty big name player.
I think the next one is actually pretty dramatic too, because last year Trevor Story had, I think, a very surprising season, to be honest. Age 33, turning 34. Last year, 25 homers, drove in 96, scored 91 runs. Stole 31 bases, a 263 batting average. The projections this year going in, though, only 136 games, just 20 homers, 72 runs, 72 RBI, and a drop-off from the 30-plus steals to 23. Also a 248 batting average. Boggs, I'm going to let you kick this one off here. Trevor Story, from these projections, to me, is a very tough sell.
It's almost the same, bucket, the same deal as Christian Yelich, an aging player who last season I was just all the way out on, right? It was 43 games in 2023. It was 26 in 2024. So last year I was like, I'm done. I think this guy is going to have some issue and I'm just not going to be involved. And he had such a great season. Really just gave me the middle finger. 263, 91, 96, 25, and 31. Amazing season for him. So I'm just going to be back in. I have him in the top 100 as well. So I understand the decreases, and this is based on the track record of him staying healthy. And but 136 games, maybe that's right. But again, based on what? Because he's been 157, 26, 43, 94, right? Like, how are we just going to say 136? To me, it seems like he's either going to play almost every game or he's going to miss a massive amount. So, I think where you take him, if he falls, I'm going to be snapping him up everywhere I can as a CI. I'll just say that. Or MI, excuse me.
Sure. Well, in 2021, that's the last full season we had on Trevor Story before last year. It was 142 games. He did it 24 homers, so again, the power is there. Stole 20 bases, but the batting average at 251, which I think is tracking a little closer to what this is saying too. So, I mean, really, it does feel like if you got Trevor Story on the cheap last year, you did pretty well for yourself. But this year, as current ADP, is he a little dicey for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, you never want to pay for a guy this year what they did last year. I think there's a little bit. Geraldo Perdomo is what comes to mind here. Also, because statistically, both these guys 90 plus 90 on runs and RBI, and there were homers and stolen bases. So you hate to pay premium on a guy that was free the following year. But I'm not really sure you are paying crazy premium. If you're paying his min price, which we've got at 65, okay. That's kind of pricing me out a little bit, but his ECR we've got is around 100. And 100 for a 2020 guy, I think, is relatively fair. He kind of changed his game. I mean, he's had 5, weird years with injuries and stuff. But this year it was like, all right, he barrels the ball again, almost 10%, hit the ball harder than he's ever done in his career. He's put it in the air. And this is a pretty hitter-friendly environment in Boston. Yeah, I think he does some stuff that he is not going to get away with. So, like, what I mean by that is I look at him and I go, wow, what he did last year was a way over expectation. I always kind of sold it. It was so cool if you could get a 250, 260 guy going 2020 outside the top 200. Paying a right outside the top 100 price if you still believe he could be 2020, I think that's okay. I think the ADP is okay, and I'm not surprised that the projections are a little bit lower, but I mean, ATC's got him at 2023 with a 248 batting average. Pretty significant drop on runs and RBI. That's the thing that really stands out to me. So the projection, based on where he's going, they don't match up. But I think he can over return a little bit than what the projections are doing, because I think they're having a hard time managing him. And I think he's okay. He's not a big target of mine, but based on the projections, this would be an avoid based on his ECR as well.
All right. Well, there's one guy I'm avoiding at his ECR and his ADP right now is Pete Crow-Armstrong. He's a top 10 outfielder. I understand last year he had a phenomenal season where he won a lot of people leagues because that first half was so good and his ADP was so cheap. That is not the case this year. And although he was a 30-30 player this year, the projections do not like him to do that again. Right now, they're showing 147 games, 23 homers, 84 runs, 78 RBI, 33 steals, 246 batting average. Now, I think it's taking into account a great deal that a third of his plate appearances last year against left-handed pitching. Again, the batting average against righties, 271. Against lefties, 188. OBP, 315 compared to 217. The slugging, 523 to 376. And the OPS against righties, 838 to just 594. I mean, the work against lefties, that's platoon guy kind of stuff. And I don't know they're going to, like, he's a great defensive player, so I don't think that isn't his future. But it is a third almost of his at-bats are going to come against left-handed pitching this year. Or he's going to start sitting against them if things get really rough. Plus, the second half last year, you could say he got exposed. 25 of his home runs came in the first half, 71 RBI. In the second half, in 62 games, just 6 homers, 24 RBI, and he hit just 216 with a 634 OPS. I think there's a lot of red flags here, and this is not new, Welsh, because Pete Crow, his whole career in the minor leagues was also the big knock on him. Well, he doesn't hit lefties very well, and that's one of the reasons why the Mets calculated on trading him. Now, look, he made him look stupid last year, no doubt about it. I'm just not willing to pay the price when I could wait till the 50th player overall and get a Wyatt Langford or a Roman Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. The projections are pretty much saying what he did in the first half is his whole season. They're almost identical. I mean, in the first half, he had like 24 homers and close to 30 stolen bases, or I mean, I can give you the exact number. He hit 25 homers with 27 stolen bases and hit 265 in the first half. So the projections are kind of killing him. And yeah, there's some warning signs. He hit 188 against lefties, as you mentioned. That is an absolute problem. His overall like chase profile is really questionable. Bat to ball is questionable. There's been a lot of talk in camp that, he's looking to make some more swing changes. He's been working with Alex Bregman and those things. Like what we know about Pete Crow is he's full of counting stats. He's one of those guys that could be a 2020 guy while hitting 220. He could be like Randy Arozarena. What happens if they hit 270? That's essentially what happened to him in the first half. But I think based on the ECR, it's volatile. I think the projection is correct, but it does stand out to us where it's like, well, look at what Pete Crow did in the first half, and that's just essentially his projection. That's what ATC is telling us. And I think that's a safe way to approach this. But there's some really big warning signs with him. He's kind of a pass for me, and there's really nothing in the projections that are, jumping out and giving us big, like, positive signs like, hey, guys, you should be, really comfortable with him this year. We've talked about James Wood versus Pete Crow-Armstrong. Like, James Wood can hit lefties, at least, even though he has strikeout problems. So 35 at ECR, it's really, really hard to stomach. I mean, if he does get those counting stats, you're not going to be massively disappointed. But what weighs bigger, the downside or the upside? He hit 216 in the second half last year.
And Boggs, like to Welsh's point, a Randy Arozarena stat line is useful. It's just not top 10 outfielder overall kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really what it is that, and typically at, they say that 950 ABs or plate appearances, whatever, that's like when you know what you have. But we saw massive swings with Pete Crow-Armstrong. So like Welsh said, this is a guy that could easily go 30-30, and he could improve on 30-30 as well if he is what he was in the first half for the whole season. But if he's what he is in the second half the whole season, he is a miserable buy at pick number 35. So I have him right in line with ECR, and I need to lower him because I'm just really not interested in paying up for a guy with that much downside. I think that's really what it boils down to with Pete Crow-Armstrong is you are buying a lot of reward, but it's a lot of risk. He becomes conditional because then you have to buy floor later to pair with him. I'm just not doing it. He's too early of a risk for me to take.
One thing I just want to add.
I could, hold on one second, question. I think I could get like a 25-20 stat line, or at a Cody Bellinger potentially, even with a much higher batting average than I'm going to get a Pete Crow-Armstrong. I'm just saying, like, there's so many guys in this range after he goes. Between Wood, Rooker's always interesting, Langford, Anthony, Bellinger, Riley Green having a great year, Jaron Duran, a nice player.
There's so much floor.
There's so much floor in those guys too. I just don't see the reason why you have to go that early on Pete. Go ahead, Walsh.
Well, it's actually going to be a compliment to what you just said. Remember that argument we
had? I'll take it.
Well, I'm complimenting the argument, not you. Sorry,
you jerk.
Well, remember we had that discussion where Arico was trashing my guy Kyle Stowers and was like, well, why would you take Kyle Stowers when you can get later? That's okay, by the way. You can have, but my point here is that type of argument to me is way more applicable when you're talking about a third round player and you can get 90 to 95%, 50 or 60 picks later. When we're talking about like a guy going 110 and, well, hey, I could get this guy at 150. Things start to fall apart a little bit for me, but like you're in critical zone when you're in the top end of your draft.
Yeah.
Like you can screw up and you can mess up and you can be okay, but you really got to not screw up your first couple round picks. So when you can get 95% with better floor of Pete Crow-Armstrong 2 rounds later and Wyatt Langford, I'm going to do that. If you could get the bottom end of Pete Crow-Armstrong in the 9th round in Randy Arozarena, like I think those are the types where I can be like, I can skip this 3rd round pick because there's just so much volatility. It makes it scary and there's no discount whatsoever.
If PCA slips to the 4th or is that where you take him, Welsh, or does it have to be further than that, do you think?
I'm open to it. I'm not as black and white as a lot of people where it's like, this is an absolute no draft. Like there might be a scenario with a team construction I'm putting together where it's like, you know what? I'm going to take a swing if he does go 30-30, but I'm probably still not doing it.
If it's him and James Wood, it's fine. But if it's him and James Wood and all those other guys, it's not just drafting him. It's also passing that floor. Which I'll take
Roman Anthony over him right now.
Oh yeah, me too. Roman Anthony, Wyatt Langford. That's my problem.
Think it's wrong.
When Pete is on the clock and those guys are there, I'll never pull the trigger on Pete Crow-Armstrong in that scenario.
All right, let's continue on with the next player to discuss. Before we do, if you want the best scenario for your fantasy leagues this year, you should be playing your fantasy baseball over on Fantrax because they have year-round engagement, 365 days a year, off-season trades, real-time updates, and seamless player transactions to keep the excitement alive all year long. Plus, you can master the Dynasty League over there, automated salaries and contracts, which I have in mind as well. It's the way to do it. They let you orchestrate your league just like a pro would. And, of course, you can do multi-team trades, too, which is really cool. A lot of sites don't let you do that, but Fantrax does. So you could trade with 2 teams, 3 teams, 4 teams, however many teams you can get to figure it out. Trading is hard, but on Fantrax, it's easier. And you can bring your fantasy league over to Fantrax today for an unbeatable user experience. Sign up today at fantrax.com/fantasypros. That's fantrax.com/fantasypros. All right, the next guy on our list is a second baseman, which makes it really intriguing because, well, you've got a tough road over here at second base. So taking shots on guys is pretty intriguing, especially if they slip in ADP. We had Chris Towers on the show a few weeks ago, and he and I were talking about Ozzie Albies, and both of us kind of look at it the same way, which is the upside of Albies is pretty high if he can ever get back to what he was a couple years ago. Problem is the projections are not too bullish about that. 140 games, 17 homers, 69 runs, 71 RBI, 11 stolen bases, and just a 249 batting average. When Ozzie Albies is at his best, he is much higher than the 8th second baseman overall. In fact, a couple years ago, he had a 33, 96, 109 season with 13 stolen bases. So, Welsh, I'll start with you on this one. Ozzie Albies, in your opinion, I understand the projections don't love him, but considering what the rest of this field looks like, where he's going between Luke Keeschau, Jordan Westberg, who's already dealing with some UCL injuries in his elbow, Brandon Lau, I feel like Albies is still worth it, despite the fact the projections don't like him. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not a big Ozzie Albies guy. That's part of the problem here, but I'd almost argue the projections are kind of friendly. Now, they're not... Well, no, but like they don't look good comparative to that good version of Ozzie Albies, which, by the way, there's pretty much only 2 seasons of that, and that is 4 seasons ago in 2023. So the projections based off of that are not favorable. But like ATC has projected a higher batting average, more homers than he had last year, a little bit less on the other counting stats, but that's kind of favorable. Here's what I'll agree. Based on his cost right now, there's a lot of upside. You could do worse. I'm probably still taking Luke Keeschel ahead of him, and we've talked about it. The position can get away, but my big argument has been like it's just kind of been just a declining, declining returns. Like his barrel rates are going down, his hard hit rate is going down. He's doing the things that you want to see. When you lose those, you want to see, okay, like get the ball in the air and pull the ball. He is doing that at an extreme degree. 27.2% pulled air percentage. He pulled the ball in the air, which you want to do for home runs, more than he had ever done in his career, and it accounted to 16 homers. So that's my problem. The overall production is declining. The adjustments he's making aren't really working. The overall hitting profile is, it is bottom 20 percentile of the league. So there's no doubt that there is upside in who he's been before and where he could go. But I think the projections are telling a story that even at 120, that might be too high. So I'm kind of out on Ozzie Albies. I think the projections, even though they hate him, this has been the same version of him since 2024.
Yeah, look, 2023, obviously a fantastic year. And look, he'd done it multiple times, so it wasn't like a one-year wonder kind of thing. He had 2 100 seasons, basically, and a couple other 24 100 seasons as well, 100-run score. So, Boggs, to me, like, this is a player, he's not 34, 35 years old like some of those guys we were talking about before. He's still just 29. So, I'm buying back in on the cheap, but I definitely think the projections are fair. Let me put that out. Projections don't like him. I think that's fair. I think it's all about valuing the player in the context. And to me, the context of Albies, because second base is weak, is a context in which I'm willing to draft him at his ADP. But where do you stand?
Yeah, I'm not in on Albies either. I just like the decline has been 3 seasons in a row. He's low in the batting order now. I want to get second base before this. I also think there's some guys. I like Jorge Polanco, who's going way after him at this point. So I don't think I'm going to be in on Ozzie Albies either. It's in his cost isn't crazy, right? But just where you have him, where you have to put him comparative to the rest of the group, really it's only the second base eligibility that's bringing him up. So I'm probably not going to be in on Albies too many times this year.
All right, the last hitter we're going to talk about, Adley Rutschman, and obviously catchers are always an intriguing prospect too. 2 catcher leagues changes the value. Single catcher leagues, you know me, I'm waiting until we're getting to Kyle Teal and Francisco Alvarez and one of those guys, and I'm taking them. But Adley Rutschman, a player that I think people were waiting on for a while to really become a superstar, and he hasn't become that. The projections this year suggest 17 homers, 64 runs, 64 RBI, 1 stolen base, and a 249 batting average. To me, that is not a very exciting stat line. Especially when you consider where he's going, which is still the 11th catcher off the board. He's not exactly free, but in 2 catcher leagues, he's still somebody that you have to kind of draft, not aggressively, but certainly at least at a value. And I just don't know if I'm there yet. Boggs, where are you at with Adley Rutschman? And let's talk about the context too between the single and 2 catcher leagues, how you would approach him.
Yeah, look, Welsh and I have done a ton of mock drafts for your 12-man, 15-man single catcher league, and Rutschman is like borderline even going. So I think that's too low. He's a great value this year though. So I am fine with where he's going. I think that he should be better this season, and I think the hate's gone a little bit too far on Adley. Mm-hmm. So I'll buy back in here.
All right, Welsh, where are you with Adley Rutschman?
I'm kind of surprised his projections are so low. Like, I understand it. There's a point where they're going to just be like, all right, never had a 200 ISO. He's hit 20 homers once in his career. The batting average, we thought this was going to be a guy that was going to hit like 300. It's going to be one of those catchers that walks into a 25 home run season. it's just never materialized. So I understand it from that standpoint, but he's just got like such an elite, like I don't whiff, I don't chase, I don't strike out profile. Things kind of fell apart this past year, but like hard hit rate was the same. He barreled the ball the same. The only thing he didn't do was he wasn't able to lift the ball and pull the ball, and pulling the ball in their home ballpark is a really good advantage, that, you know, the wind tunnel. And as far as when he is batting as a left-hander, the right side of the field has been really beneficial, but then as on the left side, you know, it's a little bit more pitcher friendly. So all of this to say, like, I'm in on Adley because I think there's still like this really good profile that's in there, especially that he's going so late. But I also can't deny that the projections are really not inspiring. Like ATC has got him hitting under 250. And he has hit over 252 the last 3 years. He had 20 and 19 homers. They have him projected at 17. So I'm a little surprised that the projections dislike him. It's weighted very much to this past season. A lot more lineup protection. I think Adley's in for a bounce back, but they definitely are not into him.
Yeah, also the overall ADP is at 152, and I'm looking around that range. I'd rather have Noelvi Marte, Gavin Williams. I'd like to take a shot on Mackenzie Gore.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm looking at some of the other guys around there. Jackson Holiday, late, intriguing. Trevor Rogers, another guy too. I really like what he did last year. Sandy Alcantara. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I just find it hard sell to take Adley Rutschman because I don't know how he's going to separate himself from the rest of the catchers that are free. You know, and I just can't.
I don't disagree with that. I don't usually see him go in the 150s. I see him go later, but to your point, he's not worth reaching. And all those names that you said are probably much more worthwhile taking instead of being like, I have to get Gabby and then settling for Alejandro Kirk or even Gabby Moreno. Like, I think
even
okay.
Drew Rasmussen, Bubba Chandler, like the names I listed were between 145 and 160 ish. So like, and that's a pretty good name still available there. It's also a pretty good sportsbook available. Download to your phone. It's a sponsor of today's show. It's Hard Rock Bet. And if you haven't tried yet, what are you waiting for? Make your first bet at Hard Rock Bet. There's still time for you to get 150 in bonus bets. If you win, just place a $5 bet. If it hits, not only do you get your winnings, but you get 150 in extra bonus bets. Download the Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app today and make your first deposit on Hard Rock Bet. All right, let's switch gears here to the starting pitchers, and let us begin with Jacob Misiorowski, a very divisive figure. The projections, I was shocked by this, Welsh. Don't love Jacob Misiorowski, yet the fantasy nerd community as a whole tends to embrace him for the most part. 9-7, just 137 innings, which to me, that was the big circle for me, 137 innings. So are they telling us there's injury? Are they telling us that there's inefficiencies? A 4.06 ERA, 156 strikeouts in those 137 innings, and 62 walks. Welsh, where do you stand with these Misiorowski ATC projections?
Yeah, he's kind of an enigma. I've been pretty open, and I might be so wrong about it, and just it'll be miserable. But like, I'm a little off of Jacob Misiorowski. I've listed him as kind of a bust, and I think it's for some of the reasons that are kind of put in our face as far as the projections go. What I think would be surprising to people are the projections buy the bad walks, but they love the strikeouts, but they don't buy the elite level. He almost had a 12K per 9 last year, and they're putting him close into the 10s. Not to say that that's not good, but you know, with a high walk rate, there might be some concerns there. As well, most projection systems, by the way, the Oopsie projection system is like in love with Jacob Misiorowski. They have him at a 3.4 ERA, but ATC has him over 4. And last year he had an over 4 ERA. So, you know, he's got great extension. It's a great fastball. It's going to be interesting what happens with that slider. Those are my big questions. He's got walk problems, and the power slider is great. But I mean, dude, last year it got hit at a 239 batting average. Like, I think that thing can die sometimes. So can he live off of the fastball all year? Can he go deep into games? Maybe the going deep into games is also what's kind of thrown in our face as far as the projections go. So I'm not surprised by the projections, and I think I would agree overall because it kind of fuels the like, hey, listen, how people are drafting him, I don't think anyone's drafting him thinking he's an over 4 ERA guy. I think people are drafting him like he's going 170 innings and he's going to have a 3.5. He's going to like his expected ERA, and he's going to have 200 plus strikeouts. That is in the realm of possibility, but I think there's more volatility in it. So I'm kind of passing.
Boggs, after Misiorowski in the consensus ADP over FantasyPros, Schlittler, Lodolo, Wheeler, King, Evaldi, Pepio, Sheehan. A lot of interesting names. I feel better about almost all those names. A lot of uninteresting names
as well.
I mean, I get, look, none of them are perfect.
Right.
But I guess, like, to me, Misiorowski, I think you can look at a guy like Pepio, let's say, and say, okay, does he have the upside of a Misiorowski? No. but I think I know what I'm getting there, and I think that has some sort of value that is important and shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, I think I think both things can be the same and fair, right? Like, I think Pepio has a much higher floor than Jacob Misiorowski, and I think the reason why the projections don't like him as much in terms of innings pitched and all that stuff is because he did play out of the bullpen last year, right? So I feel fine with where Jacob Misiorowski is going. I feel like these are a little bit light. Like Welsh said, I would point out that his xERA, his Sierra, his xFIP were all well under 4. Yeah. So to have him go over 4 in these projections, it's acceptable because young pitchers are volatile, right? Like, and he could definitely blow up in your face. But I think the key is if you're drafting Misiorowski, you get floor later. He is a conditional player, but you can say the same thing about Chase Burns and Schlittler and like all these other, younger players. So I feel like, taking him as a risk, but you have to take your pitching risks somewhere. So I don't mind taking Jacob Misiorowski where he's going. Is he, too high or too low? I don't think so. I think he's rated properly, but you have to know what you're buying when you buy Jacob Misiorowski. That's the whole thing. So I think he's better than projections, but I understand being leery of young pitchers.
All right, let's see if you're leery about Spencer Strider, because this projection system sure is. They have him with a 3.94 ERA and 11-9 record, just 26 games, 156 innings, but in that 156 innings, 183 strikeouts, 56 walks. I did watch the last start, Boggs. He was working in the 93-ish range. Could it be a different version of Spencer Strider that can get away with that? Maybe, but projections are saying that version is not one that they are certainly excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that Strider is a difficult case. Right now, I have him higher than ECR. Don't feel great about it, specifically with the velocity. But if the velocity continues to tick up deeper into spring training, I think I'll keep him there. If it doesn't move up, then I think I'm probably going to start dipping him back down a little bit. Well, Welsh, what do you have to say about Strider?
Gentlemen, you clearly did not see that as we're recording this. Spencer Strider threw today, and his velocity was up today. It was the first start. It was 93. He's ramping up. He averaged 95, and he touched 97 on his fastball. Shapes. A lot of the model guys are out there. A lot of our models out there. They're showing their blue steel, and they're also showing their fastball models. Are liking the shape that's going on. I think there's still some stuff that's missing, but what's starting to happen, and you're going to have to play this game, you're going to have to figure out here, is this a true ramp up? Because here's what you had the first start, which was like blah, everyone's freaking out. Nick comes on here, he's 70 at pitchers and blah blah blah. Then the next start, which is today, happens. Oh my gosh, he's sitting 95, he's touching 97. So then the Strider truthers are out there, everybody's wrong. And then people are like, but you really going to buy this? So this is the discourse that happens.
The problem is that the market will shift with him.
Well, it will, but also everybody's fighting their own angles right now. So do you believe that this is a ramp-up process for Strider? Because the biggest argument against him from everybody, from Eno to Nick across the board, has been that he's the guy whose stuff did not return off of Tommy John. So if what we got today's version, 95 hits 97 with decent shape, is that going to work for everybody? That's still not quite where he's at, or is he ramping up? My deal always with Spencer Strider has been that like just elite. Like he's a 2-pitch, absolutely elite monster. And if he does lose that velo, if he loses significant velocity on the fastball, a mile down per hour from last season, it's going to be really tough for him to get those big whiff numbers, because that fastball set up the slider, which was a 58% whiff pitch. And then he would drop a curveball, and this is 2024, who had a 60% whiff pitch. He needs a fastball to be able to make that slider and occasional curveball look good. Well, now it's starting to regain some value, and he's at an all-time low. All the great pitching minds are trashing him across the board, yet his stuff is coming back. So I'm a little bit wishy-washy on like where I feel about him. Like I respect what guys, specifically Eno and Nick, have to say about a guy like Spencer Strider. I think Nick went on the extreme, calling him a not even top 70 pitcher.
The other thing we didn't discuss in that conversation, Welsh, that I wish we had, and after I went back and I watched part of that show, because got great feedback on that show because of that debate. But the thing was, this was the internal brace surgery. And we don't have nearly as much data on those guys recovering, how long it takes to get velo back, as opposed to the regular old Tommy John. So I think some of that data that we keep using about Tommy John is not necessarily the same thing when we're talking about the internal brace.
And what's going to happen to people if the next start he's sitting 96? What if this is a true ramp up? And then the argument is gone that, hey, your stuff doesn't come back. It came back. You know, maybe he came back too soon last
starts
year.
Too, and not full starts either.
I would argue, not to keep belaboring this, but I would argue that the projections of ATC, based on the discourse of what the big pitching minds are saying, this is a plus. From the elite Spencer Strider that we know, just under 4 ERA, decent walks, but not a ton of innings. Like, I think it's kind of mediocre. I do think these projections are creating a nice floor right now. I am going to patiently wait to see what these next starts look like and see if he adds again. Was this 90 sitting 95? Was that 80 to 85%? And if he goes 100, do we see it coming back? I think there's a possibility the projections could be wrong on him because he's an elite pitcher, but there's a lot of worried people. But those worried people didn't have this most recent start. Spring just screws a lot of this stuff up, guys. But I will say his ADP on sites does not match up to the discourse and the projection. So from that perspective, when he's going like top 23 or 24, that's probably not the best thing because there's a lot of you want to talk about inherent risk. Talking about Jacob Misiorowski. Misiorowski is probably a safer option than Spencer Strider right now, unless he keeps going and developing into the right direction.
Sandy Alcantara, another one too, that obviously last year was a rough return from his surgery as well. But eventually things did start to look a little bit better, but projections are not saying he's going to be all the way back this year. They're suggesting a 10-11 record, which again, obviously he pitches for the Marlins, sure, but a 4.16 ERA in 28 starts, 176 innings, 148 strikeouts, 51 walks. Welsh, that's not vintage Sandy Alcantara. So are you buying these projections, or are you buying that there's upside of him returning to form as well, considering the sample size he got towards the end of 2025?
You know what this one kind of reminds me of? This one, like, pseudo reminds me of your Ozzie Albies one, where, like, when the innings projected kind of stood out to me as like, whoa, if you get a full season of Sandy doesn't pitch 170 innings. Sandy pitches 220. Yeah. He hasn't done that. He hasn't done that in 2 years. He's hit 170 and 180. Sandy, up until 2022, never, outside of his rookie year, never had a 4 ERA. Well, the last 2 seasons, it's been 4 and then 5.5. And there's that injury that was mixed in there, by the way, in 2024. So, like, this is a weird mixture. This is almost like it doesn't quite know who this guy is going to be. It's low Ks. The walks, I guess, are still okay, but the ERA is kind of inflated at 4.16. I just think we're a year out off of that injury. He had a full season behind him. We also, I just have to throw this out there, we always have the looming trade possibilities where Sandy goes to an incredible team that I think when I look at those really low ATC innings projections and I see an over 4 ERA and I see him not even getting 30 starts, that's where the projection really jumped out to me. I kind of think when we just talked about 2 really just like wildly volatile high upside pitchers, Sandy is a floor pitcher to me. You could argue that if he's a over 4 ERA, 200 innings of that could maybe hurt your team a little bit. But I really think Sandy's one of those guys where it's like quality start draft. Oh my God, give me Sandy. He's going to go 6. They've got a really good closer there in there. I'm going to buy into Sandy regardless of the projections. I think this is a year for a bounce back, but I might be self-projecting because it's like, this just all seems so low to like vintage Sandy.
Well, Boggs, he's still pretty cheap in terms of cost and ADP. He's the 162nd pitcher going overall. Again, Rasmussen's around there, Robbie Ray, Bubba Chandler. Only one of those guys is a Cy Young, and it's Sandy.
Yeah, the second half for Sandy was outstanding, right? He got rocked in the first half where his ERA was 7.22. His ERA in the second half was 3.33. So it's not just recovering and getting back to the innings, but it's also looking good in the second half and being kind of that vintage Sandy. So and almost as many innings in the second
Robbie
half.
Ray did win at Cy Young in 21, didn't he? Right? I'm not crazy. Did he?
I don't remember. I don't worry myself with Robbie Ray. silliness.
No, he did. He won the Cy Young in 21. So I apologize to all the two Robbie Ray fans out there. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bonds. I just want to correct
everyone
myself
that's
there.
a fan of tight pants is upset right now. But
Who doesn't like tight pants? I'm wearing them right now.
Sandy
I'm not wearing
Alcantara,
any.
though, with the impressive second half and just getting back up to full steam and the possibility for a trade all make him positive for me. So I'm more bullish than projections are on Sandy.
Oh, I want to just add to Bogman's really great point. His last 8 games, all 6 innings or higher. I believe 7 of those 8 were quality starts, and 9 of his last 10 games he went 6 or more. I mean, like, the second half is a really important thing that I didn't mention on Sandy, and he really balled out, similar to kind of like my Zach Gallen love. He balled out at the end of the year.
Bogman, would you rather have Trevor Rogers, who's going right before Sandy?
No, I'd rather have Sandy.
Yeah, it's tough. Rogers was so good last year.
Good.
I think I would take Rogers. Welsh, what would you do?
I'm really, really torn on that one. Again, I think Sandy is a guy that is like my floor play. I think there's a decent amount of upside. I mean, almost 25K percentage with really low walks, 3.5 ERA. I would probably go Trevor Rogers, but to be frank, I don't think I've ever drafted Trevor Rogers in a mock draft.
All right, we got 2 pitchers left to go. You know, one thing I want to throw out there too, because I didn't mention it during the Misiorowski conversation, the average fastball Misiorowski last year, 99.3 miles an hour. If there's one guy you could circle as the biggest Tommy John candidate this year in 2026 for me, it's Jacob Misiorowski, and that's another reason why I have a hard time drafting him. If the ATC projections on innings are low, is because at some point he goes, oops, and he walks off the mound holding his
Do you
arm.
remember there was all that discourse? I want to say maybe Eno was a part of it, where they did that sheet of like, here are the guys that threw, that have touched 100 and had Tommy John, and Hunter Green was like highlighted as one of those players. And then let's fast forward and we look as Hunter Green as being like MRIs, and they're worried about his arm, and he was having fatigue last year. And then you put that to exactly what you're saying. You look at a guy like Jacob Misiorowski, who consistently is throwing 100 plus. Just gives you a little bit of a pause. Like, I don't like to do that game
where
I'm like,
a bit of a pause.
Yeah, but I don't like to do that game like where it's like, well, this guy's gonna have Tommy John and blah blah blah. But it's just like,
and they all have
well,
Tommy.
Hunter Green's had Tommy John. What I'm saying is, I'd rather have a guy who is a year removed from Tommy John, like Strider at Alcantara, than I would be taking a chance on a guy who hasn't had it yet, that I think is a prime candidate. That's just where I am. And
Strider creates a really interesting debate with that, because how
Sure.
everybody is right now with him. But I get your point. I know what you're saying.
Well, the point is, I'm past the worst. Like, I'm hopeful that like we're on the upswing here after 2 years removed. All right, 2 guys here left. Cade Horton, who I know Lance Brodzowski loves this year, and that's going to be interesting to talk to him on Fantasy Fest about this, because the projections don't. They have a 9-7 record, a 3.91 ERA, 23 games, 127 innings. That's a very low mark there in innings, so I don't know if they're projecting injury for him or what. 110 strikeouts, 40 walks. Boggs, this is a tricky one here because Horton's not a big strikeout artist, so I get that, but they're also not showing any sort of development at the big league level either for Cade Horton, where things are getting better. It seems like things would get worse, and the league is adjusting to him from these projections.
I mean, we say that, but this is another guy just like Sandy, and I think I'm too low on Cade Horton based on this alone. But another guy, 4.45 ERA in the first half, 1.03 ERA in the second half. So a big improvement for a young pitcher in the second half is a nice needle mover. And I think I've kind of slept on Cade Horton a little bit. I've kind of just been more in line. I think I'm even lower than ECR on him. So I think this is a guy I need to adjust for sure because of this big second half. And like you said, maybe he doesn't have the sexiness of some of the other young pitchers, but this guy already has big league experience. He's supposed to be in the rotation the whole year. I mean, I'm looking a little more Pollyanna the harder I look at Cade Horton here.
Well, you were a Cade Horton guy last year, but these projections certainly are enough to, I think, shake any Cade Horton guy off Cade Horton for 2026.
Yeah, Lance is in a really interesting video too, where he was kind of talking about how he felt like, Cade knew he was on this cap and he was just kind of like going all out in his starts, and how that, that might adjust some of like how he ends up. It's go and listen to it, because I don't want to like give it all away, and obviously I'm not even doing a good job of like describing it, but how he was saying that like because he knew of these caps, there was a very specific way he was going into his approach. But I think a lot of people are focused on being like, okay, that's all fine, but he had a 20% K percentage. Like, how is he going to survive? But that, I also like, kind of float around and be like, that was Brian Wu. Brian Wu was one of those guys. It was really low walks, didn't have strikeouts. Did he start to make that adjustment? Cade Horton at a almost 50% whiff rate on his changeup last year. His sweeper was really good. Both of those pitches had sub 200 batting averages against. And August 1st on, you guys want to take a guess at how many runs he gave up across, I believe, 8 starts?
How many?
7. He gave up 7 earned runs on all of those starts. That's ridiculous. He had 4 in August, and he gave up 3 in the final month. And I think that was like 9 starts he had. So, I mean, he was absolutely dominant. He's got great stuff. Pitching minds like him. I like the pitch mix, but he's been a very, very popular like negative guy. Like he's going to bust this year. And I think some of that comes from the projections where it's like, look, barely a 4 ERA. The innings probably really throw you off too. Like 120 something innings. That's all that you're going to get out of Cade this. I don't think that's a possibility when he went 118. Low. Yeah, it's very, very low.
All right. Last guy is another one too, who like, if he doesn't perform well, that spot in the rotation at the end for the Red Sox is open there. Oviedo might be in there. It could be a little Connolly Early, who I love, or Brayan Bello, who we're going to talk about here. Projections say 10-8, a 4.24 ERA, 27 games, 154 innings, just 123 strikeouts, just 53 walks. It's not exactly dominant stuff, Welsh. That is just bleh. And Connolly Early is a really tough young lefty, and I can understand wanting him to get a little time in AAA again and just, let him slow cook. But to me, like Brayan Bello is definitely a guy that if he doesn't pitch well in the first half of the year, his spot is definitely in danger.
I mean, it is like a ticking time bomb. Like Conley Early looks phenomenal. Peyton Tolley looks great. You've got 2 great pitchers.
Too. That's right. I apologize. I forgot about him too.
Well, you just got these 2 great pitchers that are floating out there. And this is comparing against Brayan Bello, who had a 17% K percentage. Like that just, I know like strikeouts aren't everything. But
there's
like
something though.
If you do his K minus walk percentage, which is a number you should pay attention to, it's like 9% because he walked 8%. He only struck out 17. And that kind of equates to also some of the projections. I mean, he had a 3.3 ERA, but an expected 3.48. That's not, again, those are not good numbers. Those are not sustainable out there. But he just kind of got away with some stuff. So yeah, I mean, from a projection standpoint, I think it does make sense because the expected ERA, some of what I mentioned, like the really, really low strikeouts, the way his barrel rate was up, the hard hit, like some of that, guys were also being able to launch the ball on him, that if he's going to be giving up homers and he's going to be walking guys, he's not going to be able to stay in the rotation. And the projections are kind of putting all this together. A 7K per 9, 3 walk per 9 with a 4 ERA. It's not going to last, especially when you have elite guys. So this is like the lowest totem of this entire list, but this actually might, now that I think about it, because you set this up, Joe, all of this talk is to just be like, hey, make sure you've got a little pin or a star or whatever the hell you do in your league on Conley Early, so you make sure you can maybe get ahead of him by a week. Watch Brayan Bello starts for when you should pick up Conley Early.
How about you, Boggs? Where are you at with this whole conversation of Red Sox pitchers?
I mean, does Bello even make it to the season as a starter? Because, he's got crushed in his 2 spring starts so far. So, 3.1 innings pitched, 24.5 ERA. And as Welsh mentioned, 4.38 xERA, 4.39 xFIP, 4.55 Sierra. He got lucky last year a lot. And it really seems, if you look at just the splits month by month, he hit a wall because he got crushed in August and September. And he was pretty good leading into that. ERA every month, no higher than 4.03 and a lot of 2s in here. I mean, from June to August, his ERA was under 3 that entire time, but he just got smashed in September and October with a 5.40 ERA. So he's not striking out enough guys. He doesn't make enough guys to whiff. He doesn't induce bad contact enough. I think he's going to get smashed and lose that spot. So I'm just not going to be in on Bello.
97 stuff plus overall, and of all 5 pitches, only one of them is above 100 for your median line there. So Brayan Bello's got a lot of work to do. And I think it's a sinker, by the way. That's not great.
He's a throw in on a trade where someone a team that has really bad pitching could use him and maybe develop him. But I think the Red Sox are going to move on.
Yeah, Tolley, I know, had a good start the other day. Connolly Early so far in spring, he's got 4 innings, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk, 2 earned. So he's looked much better. That's for sure. You can put that in the books. I like his approach too. I'm a big early guy. So those are the names that projections don't like. But what do you think about some of these players? Are you in on Spencer Strider, Ozzie Albies, Jacob Misiorowski? Who do you like? Who do you not like? Drop your comments below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and drive all this traffic to us over here on Fantasy Pros MLB. And don't forget to join us live for the Fantasy Fest, 3 p.m. Eastern on March 11th. That's Wednesday. That's coming up very soon. We want you to be a part of it. We want you to hang out with us. So ring that bell till it goes ding so you don't miss the fest. And of course, if you have to, because work and family and kids, don't worry. It's going to be all in a playlist there. So you can watch it all back, or you can watch it twice, watch it live and then watch it on demand. There's so many things you can do. That's the beauty of YouTube. All right, that'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Scott Bogman and the Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Stay away from those projections. They're dangerous.